Have you ever done any graffiti, Ollie?
No, of course not.
Really? You're not that sort of person?
Have you?
You're not the sort of person, no comment, you're not the sort of person to leave your mark.
Did you tag up Lewisham? Duncan Roberts. The streets belong to the Roberts.
No, I tried to do tagging in like the back of my school books, but I was very bad at it because I'm not very artistic. And, graffiti is basically like cool calligraphy, isn't it?
Well, I suppose so. When I was young, I borrowed from my school library the book The Hungry Caterpillar, and I enjoyed it so much that I wrote on every page, Oliver, 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 in like a marker pen. And,
well, there
my
you go.
parents had to go out and buy a new copy for the school because I'd ruined it.
That leads us very nicely into our topic of conversation for today, which is watermarking, just leaving your mark, making sure everybody knows how something is produced or whose it is, right? So Anthropic are introducing watermarking into text that is generated by Claude. Not yet, but on any model that is released post the 2nd of August, because that's the EU directive that means we need to know whether something is being created using AI or not. Now, that has existed for images in SynthID, which is Google's technology, for some time. But as I understand it, this is the first time it will be released in a consumer AI model for text. What's your first view on that?
Good.
Right.
Good. Yeah, I think it's not before time. Come on. Yeah. Let's make sure everyone who is churning out absolute slop is found out for it.
But do you not think it was pretty obvious it was slop anyway?
I think so, but it's difficult to prove, isn't it? I mean, you have often, I'm a Luddite with this stuff, and you would often be like, dash, but I've always used M dashes. I've always done it. So I could be accused of slop, whereas now I could be like, well, where's the watermark?
Well,
baby?
Here's the thing though, right? So true. These things were constantly changing. So at one point it was the M dash, then it's not about, it's this, then it's quietly, and then all these different tells. But, right, if you there's a difference between generating something using AI and then chucking that out as if it's your own versus maybe using AI to copy edit or to proofread something and make slight changes to some of your work. Even if you do that, which the EU does not dictate that you must have an AI watermark on that. Anthropic have decided that they will. Even if you make any small changes, that will then have the textual, is that a word?
Sure, it's today.
Textual. Close to textual, close to, but any minor edits will then have that watermark added to it. And it will survive copy and pasting because it's fascinating how it actually works. And I think this is a part of another conversation in that it survives copy and pasting because it's about the statistical likelihood of certain words being chosen in relation to other words is the actual watermark. So it's within the words themselves rather than any kind of invisible code or whatever. So if the only way you would ever be able to say, well, you can't, run it through a program is if you never used AI at all. But I know that you have used AI to check a sentence, which I think is cool, but it then opens you up to people saying, well, it's AI slop, when it isn't.
Well, the only way I use it is I put my thing into it and say, you're my worst enemy, rip it apart, because I'm sick of my actual enemies ripping it apart. If I kind of get that process done early, which I assume because the piece doesn't change unless it's that's a weak argument, in which case I go off and reinvestigate
unless you're
it.
copying and pasting, unless you're taking anything from that output and putting it in. So you would have to keep the two completely separate.
Yeah, which I would. But the statistical likelihood of words being chosen point, though, means that it is, if you were to send a piece in to Claude and say, edit this for me, and it highlighted it and you made a few changes, surely it's less likely it would be flagged because so a lot of it. I was reading one article. It was like it would use words like bad instead of horrible, and the likely sequence of bad being used in a certain way is how it kind of goes. Well, that was probably AI because a human wouldn't have done it in that order. It's less likely to have done it in that order, whatever it is. But the less you change from your original copy, surely means the less likely it is. Maybe what if it just changes one instance of horrible to bad?
Yeah.
What could it pick up? Be like, well, humans use the word bad.
We haven't actually got the answer to these questions yet, right? That's the key. We don't actually know because it hasn't been implemented yet. I think this is the point, is that if you add one sentence from AI that has that watermark embedded in it somehow, because you've just asked for one sentence, the rest is human created, and you add one sentence, boom, AI generated all of it. And this leads me on to my next point, which is if it is embedded into everything eventually, and it's not just Claude, it's OpenAI, it's Copilot, it's Grok, heaven forbid, and everything, even for the most minor interjection of AI into your workflow, which everybody's trying to do anyway. So sometimes you might not be able to help it, and you're really proud of something I was human created, but I just used AI to just copyright it, and it said make this change or whatever. Boom, AI. Everything becomes AI. Therefore, is worthless. The watermarking is completely worthless because everything comes out as being AI generated. Then join me in a small thought experiment, if you will, Ollie. If everything is watermarked, like every piece of text is watermarked as AI generated, just, put your mind in that place, even if it's
meaningless then, isn't it?
It's meaningless. But then they do something else, which is say we can then say we're tying it to your account. So if the specific keys are used that are associated with your account, now go, well, this is AI generated using Claude, or AI generated using Copilot, or AI generated by Ollie using Claude on this date and time. Suddenly it becomes a tracking mechanism, and that has loads of other implications. By watermarking stuff like this, text-wise, I can understand it from an image point of view, but text, like your email is watermarked. Where does it stop when you're able to track that a text is AI generated? By what model? By whatever. Suddenly this nefarious kind of thing gets into something that was never previously able to be watermarked, and everything is trackable through stuff that is previously not being able to be tracked. That starts to become quite scary, I think.
I just don't, for the water, I just don't understand. Like, I understand how over a blog that's 500 words, that you can say, using our statistical modeling, this was AI because this is strange. Which it would have to be. It'd have to be abnormal, right? So, like, Duncan wouldn't normally use these words, nor would any of the other 8 billion people on the planet. Only AI could have constructed them in this way. From a legal, when we released that blog, that from a legal perspective, I don't know how that's defendable. So it's it's pure coincidence. Like, surely it's on the balance of probabilities, a human would not select the words in this order.
I think it's much more robust than that.
How can it be?
This leads me to the next point, right? Is that, and I don't know, right? But I believe it is. And let's just assume for now.
They've got to you. They've used the word watermark, and you're like, oh, I know what that is in like images and books, so it must be fine. Well, their description is here's the word order, and we reckon that's AI. I'm sure it is more robust. Otherwise, the EU would. Well, actually, I've seen some of those discussions in council chambers. I'm sure they wouldn't actually. They'd be like, watermark, got it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, great.
We haven't actually got the tool out yet. We haven't got a model that watermarks text, and we haven't got a tool that can then identify that. But we do have it in images. And images, if you look at the images, Synth ID, you can take a screenshot of an image or a phone picture of an image, and it will still be able to read that watermark because of the distribution of the pixels within that image. This is the same thing. So I don't know how much. So say you've got completely human generated content, you copy and paste one sentence in or one word, how much of that content needs to be replaced by AI generated content to determine that watermark? I don't know. But it also leads me on to another question, which is how much is this watermark going to affect quality? So you made the point about, we'll just change the word horrible to bad. Some people might not want the word horrible, the word bad. They might want horrible because it's more meaningful and it tells the story better. On a much broader scale, that can affect your writing style. So the watermarking is affecting the quality. Now, if you go...
using AI is affecting the quality, isn't it? Which is how it's being watermarked in the first place, is because AI did it. So you should have used the word horrible if you were a good writer and didn't rely on AI. It's now bad, and you're going to be outed by the watermark for using bad, and it sucks.
Yeah, so, right. Okay, yeah, I understand your position, and you're still, so the quality is going to be even worse, I guess, because of the watermarking.
Oh, I see, because it's trying to embed certain word usage just to reaffirm, like, I mean, I think, yeah, you're right. Because, the point, it would have to be abnormal, an abnormal sentence structure, and an abnormal usage of words in certain order for it to be like, it's not conceivable that the 8 billion people on the planet could have done this of their own volition. And as a result, it must read really weird.
But it's because of the distribution of certain words versus the key, the kind of the watermark key that you do that with, and then those two things together then show that it's AI generated. So the words will be in a certain order or distributed in a certain way alongside the key that is given. We'll go, this has been AI generated. And in a worst case scenario, this has been AI generated by Ollie using Claude, sitting in his pants in his office at this time. So
that's a footnote in all my work.
But right. Let's look at that quality thing. So the watermarking takes AI text, which is already questionable quality according to you, arguably. I agree with you, but
because it's weird. Like, that's the point.
Because it's weird.
It's a strange. You can tell because it's like, I feel, it's like uncanny valley, but with
it is a bit
English language.
It is a bit. That's a really good way of putting it. This makes it worse. This makes it even more uncanny valley because it's watermarked. Right, that we don't know yet. We don't know the impact on quality. However, changing the word horrible to bad, it doesn't have a terrible impact other than the reader going, that's a bit of a terrible word choice. Let's look at this in code, right? In legal documents. If the watermarking somehow impacts code choice of words or a choice of, structure of that code or legal documentation, it changes it because of that. That's suddenly not, like, even worse. The impact of that is greater than somebody going, I didn't like that word choice. So we don't know the answers to these questions, but those are the things to keep track of. When watermarking is implemented in text, does it make AI generated text even more uncanny valley and awful than it is now? Does it impact the quality of the code that it generates? Does it impact its implementation into workplaces where word choice really matters? And will Claude go, don't worry, for an extra fee, we'll remove that watermark? And suddenly it's a nice little money spinner.
I have this image in my head now of like AI being like, well, for something like this, a human wouldn't write delete database. So if we pop that in, we'll know, won't we? We'll definitely know it's AI. Look, maybe conceptually I'm struggling to get my head around it. That said, I do think it's a good thing. I have to say, I do think it's a good thing because I think there's a lot of absolute crap. There are two victims really now from AI when it comes to content. There's the people whose content is being harvested and replicated over and over again in weird ways. And there's the audience. I mean, it sucks. There's just so much stuff out there that on the face of it, it's like, that's an interesting topic. And then you just know, like, I'm going to get nothing out of this. This is awful. Yeah. This is AI generated. And being able to say like, well, that's not your original argument. You shouldn't be making it. It's just been churned straight out of Claude is, I think, going to be an important thing for a lot of people, just for the integrity of the world that we sit in.
What about if you've got a good argument and you use Claude to I've often said one of the things that I find quite useful with AI is not producing content necessarily using it, but sitting down and just doing a complete stream of consciousness into it and then going, organize my thoughts for me. Like, help me there. The ideas there aren't Claude's, they're mine, but they've been organized by Claude. What about that? I think it's important to understand what watermarking means. It doesn't mean everything in there is Anthropic's, is Claude's. Because if you look at it like they've ingested all this copyrighted work, that's another controversial topic. They've ingested all this content and now they could spit that content out, watermark it and go, well, it's mine now. That's now theirs. Right. Rather than whoever created it in the first place.
But I think if you declared, because you would if you had an editor, if you said this work was edited by so and so, whatever, there's no harm saying, well, I came up with all these original ideas, but Claude did edit this. What's wrong with that? I think the issue at the moment is people passing stuff off that just isn't theirs and they have no idea. In a lot of cases, they can't even answer questions on it because they haven't read the output. Yeah. That's the real issue. And I think for companies like Anthropic and OpenAI actually showing, I know the EU has kind of forced them to, but actually showing like, yeah, we also don't like our tool being used for this.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of examples of that because they're in danger at the moment of kind of being a bit of a joke. So ChatGPT now is kind of an insult. So, oh, you ChatGPT'd it.
Yeah.
If actually people have commented on our podcast saying, what's your source? ChatGPT, right? It's an insult. Now that's really bad for OpenAI if the public consciousness associated with their tool is it's just slop. It's just a slop generating machine. Whereas actually it's got a variety of much more important and useful use cases that I would argue it needs to get to actually be economically viable in any way whatsoever. So I think this is potentially a positive thing for two reasons. If it makes people feel a little bit more like, well, I could get found out now. Before I couldn't. But now I could get found out, so maybe I'll be a little bit more serious about what I'm doing. At the most extreme, sloppy side of the internet, you're over the other end, which is like, I'm a busy guy or I don't have time, can you arrange this? In which case, you'd probably declare that anyway.
Yeah, you would. And I've never been
on the topic.
I've never been shy of saying, yeah, I used AI to help me do this. And in some cases, it's made things better. In others, it's made it worse. And learning that process is part of learning how to use the tool. The interesting thing, and I agree with you on this, is like people just taking a moment to go, I can't just pass this off as my own now. And that's a weird cultural phenomenon as well, is you see people, I saw it on social media, on Reddit or something, somebody was posting on Facebook going, look at my children's book that I've written. It's now being published and we've got volume 2 coming out in another 2 days and volume 3 coming out tomorrow. And there's no way you could produce these at that rate. And B, like the art styles are all completely inconsistent. It's obviously AI generated. And they have people going, well, this is AI generated, isn't it? And they're like, no, my brother is an artist for Pixar and has actually been drawing these images for me. And you're like, well, no, it is. And there's this denial. There's like, it's really obviously AI generated. And I've seen lots of examples of that. It was really obviously, and people just like, nope, completely me. You know, and this will just stop that in its tracks.
Well, there is I mean, it's the same thing as like different bylaws and licenses and things like that, which is like, okay, you need, because there was one in the UK as an example, which is you need a dog license. So to make sure that you will look after a dog properly, you need a dog license. And everyone said like, the problem with that is the people who are good dog owners will get a license and that won't solve any problem whatsoever because they're already good dog owners. And the bad dog owners won't because they have no respect for authority or licensing infrastructure, as demonstrated by how badly they look after their dogs. Those people, I think, the griftiest of slot merchants will continue regardless.
The griftiest of slot merchants. That's the children's book in itself.
Oh, we should do one. We should do an AI generated. You go to shortfuseresearch.com and peruse our selection of AI generated children's
griftiest
books.
of slot merchants. Yeah,
but you know, there'll still be a lot of it out there. The part that I think will be interesting. So for you, it's like a technical part, like how are they doing this? For me, it's like what is the social and economic impact of this? For two reasons. So will it genuinely stop people? And in a piece we published, that's the bit we end on, right? It's like we're going to watch LinkedIn and see if it calms down. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's like a live experiment, LinkedIn is. Yeah. They have also, of course, got their own mechanism
AI
now.
slop. Yeah.
Does it do anything? Who can say? Is it just a placebo to make people feel like they're cleaning up their feeds?
I've used it a couple of times with you.
With my stuff?
No.
Have you? I thought you said with you. like, a new blog from Short Fuse. Slop. No, I have a few because they're egregious, sloppy pieces of rubbish. You know, they're absolute drivel. But also Spotify has just announced, like, we're going to flag it if it's an AI-generated band, unless you already follow that band. So this is kind of, you start seeing punitive action. Unless you already follow that band, it will not be recommended to you because it's an AI-generated band. So you're seeing a lot of social factors now coalescing around what we have defined the sloppening, which is the slop reckoning. You heard it here first, guys.
I like it. It makes me feel, that word makes me feel a touch uncomfortable, I have to admit.
The sloppening. It does, yeah. Maybe we'll see if we can come up with a better word, but for now it's the sloppening.
No. Let's push on.
Yeah. But you see all of that. So anyway, there's one side of it, which is, does it genuinely deter slop making? All of these different measures. Anthropic being the most public, but there have been a few more creeping in at the sides. And again, all of the other AI guys. But also what happens if you're an author or you're an academic or you produce something in work that is your own and someone says it's slop and here is the proof, but you can prove it isn't, who's liable? So is it, hey, Anthropic, you've watermarked this. Your statistical model does not work appropriately and I can prove that I do just write like a crazy person.
Yeah.
You know,
but what happens and I guess this is the thing, right? What happens if you're a famous literary author and your editor, so somebody outside of, somewhere else, just uses AI to do one tiny thing in your book, and somebody runs that book, and like regardless of the technical implementation of the statistical significance of the words and stuff like that, it picks it up and it goes, this book was AI generated. Like that's, and then you go, well, no, it wasn't, but I didn't do anything. Then suddenly you've got to get into this whole thing of like who did what when to make that come up.
It's a great example. And actually, I think from a corporate point of view, so books go through a very rigorous process, but so does content in large enterprise. It might go through a legal review who might flag things. It might go through an editorial review, a proofreading review, a design review. And in all of those now, CMS systems included, are AI enabled. So you're right. It could be, your honest work written appallingly, but in an authentically human appalling way. And then as it's tightened up through each of those gates, it's got things stamped all over it. Let's say you lose your job as a result. Like, what do we need this person, this content producer for? AI has just proven. Who do you sue? Right. You've just lost your job. It's very unfair. You have a legal case. You have damages. Is it Anthropic for watermarking unfairly? Let's say you can genuinely prove, like, hey, I wrote this in a Word document. I then hit publish, none of that other stuff, and I can prove I did not use AI. You could go after Anthropic, presumably, because it's defamed you.
Yeah.
In a corporate organization, imagine how complicated that gets. The investigations of, okay, well,
where did it happen?
Yeah.
And surely, as enterprises are all pushing for AI use. Like, if you're not using AI, and your metrics are showing that you're not using the tools enough, so you're going to use it. So then it's going to throw up that it's AI generated, and we get back to, well, that's meaningless then, because actually the meaningful thing is the content any good? That's the bit.
I think there's a big difference to your point earlier on with, hey, this has been tightened up by AI and is now being tarred with the same brush as this was completely fabricated by AI and is provably false. So a lot of the big, and in the corporate world, a lot of the professional services companies, in fact, I think probably every one of the big four by now have got into hot water over they delivered this report and it was complete nonsense. It was just absolute gibberish. Well, the real issue there is it's absolute gibberish. Yeah. And as a result, we've found out it is AI related. That's not new to AI. There are many, many cases of reports being submitted by some poor overworked intern who suddenly has to draft a 200,000 word tome on why the rail system in Connecticut isn't operating as efficiently as it could, and has made stuff up because it's midnight and it's due in at 1 a.m. It's gibberish. That's the problem. Watermarking won't help solve those things, I don't think, because how can it?
Yeah. All right. Well, we will watch this one with great interest because nothing's been released yet, but I think it's going to be an evolving story in the ever-evolving landscape of AI watermarking. Oh, I've just been AI watermarked. But okay, good. Well, we'll watch it closely, and I'm sure we'll do a follow-up episode as the news comes out. So get graffiti tagging, Ollie, I think is the point.
I will do. Authentically human crime.
All right. We'll see you all again soon.
Cheerio.
Bye.